I will revert back to the first item on the topical issues agenda in the names of Deputies Terence Flanagan and Eamonn Maloney to the Minister for Environment, Community and Local Government. Current prices in the rental sector. You have 2 minutes, Deputy Flanagan.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach, and I want to thank the Concordia for the opportunity of introducing this very important topical issue of the need for a cap to be placed on rental prices in Dublin. And we know that rental prices in Dublin, Minister, have risen through the roof, increased in fact by 35% since 2011, and they're nearly back to their high peak prices. We know that the average price in Dublin to rent a 3-bedroom house is up to €1,400 per month, and in some areas it's actually up to €2,000 per month, which is quite a lot of money. A recent NABCO report found that 1 in 3 property renters in Dublin are now worried about the risk of losing their home. Obviously, with their no limit being put in place, tenants are very worried about their rights and the fact that landlords are very much in charge and can increase prices almost overnight. And more people obviously are being forced to rent as well because of the new central bank rules in recent times. That puts a lot of people out of the property market able to purchase, but into the rental property market. And for anyone on an average income, it is becoming extremely expensive, with a huge portion of a person's income being spent on renting a property, with wages not having increased obviously in recent years, but with all the deductions that have taken place, with all extra taxes, increase in transport prices, as well as rental price increases. We know that renters have been forced out to commuter counties as a result of the high prices in Dublin, and that in turn is forcing up prices in commuter counties by up to 14.5%. These prices obviously are forcing some families into a homeless situation because it becomes so unaffordable for them. And we know in January, for instance, that there were 2,980 adults who found themselves in a homeless situation, and that's at huge expense, of course, to the taxpayer. We know, for instance, last year €4.5 million was spent by Dublin City Council on housing people in hotel accommodation. It's something obviously that has to be looked at very urgently by the Minister and the Government. So to ask, Minister, can you give some, I suppose, hope to people who find themselves having to rent at the moment, that extra supply will come online?
Now, Deputy Maloney, 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thanks, Curly. Minister, I just want to bring to your attention, as the previous Deputy has done, the issue of the private rental sector and the accelerating levels of rent that are being charged. I believe that we cannot ignore the sort of trends that are presently taking place within that sector, and I firmly believe that the only solution to this is that we would have a rent freeze, a temporary rent freeze, I think ideally for a period of perhaps 2 years. And the reason I'm in favour of that, Minister, is that for the simple reason that if any deputy had come into this House, say 12 months ago, and stood up here and made reference to the private rental sector and said that it was an attractive sector to be investing in, they would have been laughed out of the place. But the most recent figures indicate a very, very different picture, and it's not only in the capital; it's widespread. In fact, the largest purchasing group in the residential market during the past 12 months, during the past year, have been investors. In fact, to an the alarming figure that almost 1 out of every 3 properties sold in the private rental sector in the past 12 months has been an investor. So, Minister, it's a good for various reasons within the market. It's a good period to be an investor. It's not a very good period to be a family living in a private rented accommodation. because my experience is the same as the previous deputy, that no longer is it a case of individual people being made homeless. It is now a situation where families are being made homeless, and we cannot allow it. We cannot allow this situation without some control, and that's why, Minister, I believe there should be a 2-year rent freeze.
Minister Phelan, 4 minutes.
Okay. I would like to thank the deputies for raising this very serious and important issue. The private rental sector is regulated by the Residential Tenancies Act, which sets out the rights and obligations of landlords and tenants, including in relation to rent, security of tenure and the termination of tenancies. The Act was passed in 2004 and represented the most significant legislative reform in the private rental sector in over a century. Prior to this, there was little or no security of tenure for tenants, and in most tenancies the landlord had virtually absolute right to raise the rent at any time. Security of tenure under the 2000 Act is based on rolling 4-year tenancy cycles, where a tenant has been in occupation of a dwelling for a continuous period of 6 months and no notice of termination has been served in respect of that tenancy before the expiry of the period of 6 months. The tenancy is established for the remainder of the 4-year period. Landlords and tenants may not contract out this provision of the Act. A report by DKM Economic Consultants, commissioned by the PRTB and published last autumn, considered a number of options in relation to rent control, including a rent cap. A review of the literature for the report found that where rent caps are introduced, the fall in rents leads to a reduction in the supply of rental units. Supply is further impacted by a consequent reduction in housing mobility. As the main reason behind increasing rents is a shortfall in housing supply, we need to exercise caution in relation to measures which prima facie seem to offer a solution. This is especially the case where the sector is volatile. In a recent Red C poll carried out by the PRTB, 29% of landlords stated that they intended to sell their property as soon as possible. In addition, according to central bank data, 38,000 buy-to-let mortgages are in arrears, accounting for 27% of all buy-to-let properties. Almost 1 in 5 households is now housed in the private rented sector, compared with 1 in 10 in 2006. The rental sector cannot be divorced from the wider housing market, and the virtual collapse of the construction sector after the economic crisis has led to a serious supply problem, particularly in Dublin and other cities. With the growth of household formation and the recovery in the economy, the lack of supply has seen market rents stabilising and rising since 2012. In the third quarter of 2014, rents were 5.6% higher nationally than in the same quarter of 2013, according to the most recent rent index from the Private Residential Tenancies Board. Rents for houses were 4.3% higher, while apartment rents were 7.3% higher than in the same quarter in 2013. In Dublin, which is seeing the highest rates of increase nationally, overall rents are higher by 9.5%, although the rate of annual increase was down slightly. This moderating of rental inflation is reflected in the latest daft.ie rent report. Fundamentally, though, the issues remain one of supply, and the key to stabilising rents is to restore equilibrium to the housing market by addressing supply issues. Thank you.
Now, Deputy Flanagan, 1 minute.
Thank you, Minister, for your response. And as you very much stated, it's very much an issue of supply. So, if you can just provide details to the House as to what level of supply is going to come online for this year, for 2015, and for the coming years, in order to provide hope, I suppose, and provide a home for people who very much badly need it. And we know, obviously, per DAFT and their most recent report, that on February the 1st, only 5,200 properties were actually available nationwide, and that's been the lowest figure available since May 2007. So we have a huge issue here. Obviously, with the central bank as well introducing its new rules, that's going to force more people into the private rental market. So it's a huge issue, Minister, and obviously as TDs we get lots of constituents coming to our clinics raising these issues, and they're very worried, they're very traumatised, and they need some hope. And I very much, just to conclude, to state that I agree with Deputy Maloney and his point that we need to look at bringing in some element of a rent freeze, because what's been happening in recent times is very unfair, particularly for tenants who've been there on a long-term basis. And we know in Germany, for instance, that the law allows the state government to cap rent increases to be no more than 15% over 3 years. So perhaps we could look to Germany or other countries where they have a rent cap.
Minister, thanks for your reply. And can I just say that, yeah, like yourself, I read the Red Sea poll. I'm not sure about the validity of or the truth or otherwise of those that were surveyed and said that they would very quickly give up their private investment in the rental sector, because why would they give it up? They say in a poll they would, but as we now know, rents were at their highest in 2007 when the artificial boom was in full flow. And it's extraordinary that today the rents are only 6% below what they were in 2007. So, Minister, what I'm saying to you is that in the reality, some landlords are exploiting the fact that the demand for rented property is outstripping the supply by continuing to increase the rents until they reach the same level as 2007, which I've just said, the year when Irish rents peaked. And I go back to a point that I made before, Minister, and we can take credit for dealing with the homeless thing, and you and your department can rightfully, and we as government supporters, and for the programme of social housing. But unless we take action on this question of the private rental sector, which is out of control, there's no control effectively. Other European countries have, we have none. And in fact, what's happening here in the capital, where the biggest problem is that if we don't do something about it, it's going to become a landlord's paradise.
Margaret, Minister, 2 minutes to respond.
I want to thank the deputies for raising this very important issue. And I do take on board, you know, the whole issue of rent and instability in the rental market. And I would have spoken at great length, you know, about the need, you know, for stability in the rental market. You know, citing examples as France and Germany and indeed Italy as well, where they have a very stable rental market. And I think, you know, we should look at doing, you know, some research as to how, because I do believe that we really do need to address this situation, and we need to address it very, very urgently. And I remember another deputy that raised, you know, the whole, it's amazing that after the boom that we had, that we are now back in this situation again, so acutely. And I do know that another deputy, indeed Deputy Nolan, raised the same issue here not too long ago in the House, where he called it, you know, a perfect storm that has hit, you know, this whole housing crisis. Now, I will convey, and Minister Kelly has introduced, you know, lots and lots of, you know, strategies, and his homelessness strategy, and he is indeed, you know, making very, very good inroads into dealing with the housing crisis. And I certainly will make it my business to take up this issue with him and have further discussion and revert to the deputies at another time. Thank you,
Minister.